Either way, I'll pan and scan this to death so it'll look a lot better, and I'll edit it down to about 34 minutes. Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to The Disconnected. I am here with Daniel Kramer that I have been admiring from afar for quite some time. Daniel, thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's this is cool. I've watched a number of your shows, so it's good to actually be in the hot seat.
Well, thank you for that. I'm flattered to hear that. It's always interesting because I swear on at least the Imprint announcements, I swear I read your name on my announcement show 2 or 3 times a month at the very least. It seems like you've been extra busy these last few months.
It's been kind of nutty, yeah. I was like, really, it was down to the wire. It seems like every time I leave for trips, I have 100 different things that are due before I leave. And there's always like, not just the packing, but like, oh, I've got like, all these video essays. I went to a wedding in October last year, and I had to go to a wedding on the East Coast. And it was like, I'm getting texts from my partner who currently lives on the East Coast. It's we're in a long distance thing for not so we're going to be moving in together soon, but he kept on saying make sure to pack your suit and your shoes and everything, and like meanwhile, like I'm not as worried about that as I am worrying like completing 6 different video pieces for Imprint and for another company. I'm just like, oh yeah, okay, fine. So
yeah. I think it was Frank Jiang I spoke to, who does a lot of the Hong Kong commentaries and subtitle translations. He was saying that every time that he's on vacation with his wife, she sleeps like a normal 6 to 8 hour night, and he stays up half the night in the hotel room while she's sleeping, recording commentaries. I'm like, Frank, you're a monster. What are you doing?
I've only done one commentary track away from home. Unless you count like going to Alan Arkish's house, which I've done, or like any number of other people I've had on. Alan's like really, I think I might be forgetting, but I think he's the only one I've gone to his house for and done it there with him. But yeah, I normally I'm away from things when I'm traveling or whatnot. Unless, except for recently, I did a few trailers from Hell in Europe, so that was fun. But that's the only thing I've done work-wise while not at home, not at my home studio. So there you go.
The pictures from this most recent vacation looked incredible. You looked like you had just the most absolutely tourist site studded vacation possible. Can you share where you went? Because that was really interesting.
We began in Lisbon, and we were only there for a short amount of time. Then we were in Oslo for about 3 days, because my partner was there for a conference. He's in data science.
Oh, nice.
So I was kind of left to my own devices for a few days while he was at this conference, or for 1 day really, mainly while he was away. So on the 1 day, I was going around, I was texting Alan Arkish saying like he did all these trailers, and I was like, I don't know what to do in Oslo, and he was saying like, well, just do a Bergman film and just say that you're in Sweden. And I was like, I don't want to do that, but I want to actually do like Norwegian, at least a Norwegian title. So I came up with 2 in Oslo. Lisbon, Oslo, Montpellier, which is in the south of France, and then we took the high-speed rail to Paris. So it was a very nice trip. I did a bunch of Trailers from Hell videos there, which the first one of which surprised me on Monday is airing this coming Friday.
Wow.
The one that I did in front of the Eiffel Tower is a film that no one seems to like very much, but I grew up watching on AMC back in the 90s, Paris When It Sizzles with Audrey Hepburn and William Holden. Always liked that film. I don't know, people, even Audrey Hepburn hated it. it's funny that she had a wonderful time making it, but didn't like the final product. I always thought that the final product of the actual movie was quite charming, and it was one of the most meta films that I had encountered. One of the most I should say one of the most innovative meta narrative movies that I had encountered at that point in my life. I was just a little kid, so it always has kind of been there with me. So I thought and of course the movie within the movie and Paris When It Sizzles is called The Girl Who Stole the Eiffel Tower. So I was like, oh, well, I can do it in front of the Eiffel Tower.
Perfect.
What else is better? And then the guy's email, I just did the intro. You have to do a commentary under the trailer. And then the guys at Trailers from Hell, Alex and Danny emailed me. It's like, do you have the final video? We don't see it in the folder. I was like, oh no, I just did the intro, and I was like, well, Joe had you programmed for this week. I was like, I think I can hop on that really fast, and I was like, I did it, real quick. But the first of those Trailers from Europe, and then I get on. I can mention that Joe Dante is a part of this Sidney Furie box set. And I jump on to the interview with him just yesterday morning, and he's like, by the way, when you tell me which titles that you do, make sure to mention that you've only done the intro, because I thought that these are all done. So anyway, maybe TMI, but in any event.
The amount of things that I could talk about in response to all that is just legendary. I love that. I mean, first of all, Audrey Hepburn, when you have a filmography like that, even some that she might think is a dud, still going to be better than most, it seems like.
Well, yeah, I tend to. I was watching your interview with Lee Gambin, and I concur with Lee Gambin. It's like once you hit like the 90s, really heading into the year 2000, my interest begins to wane a little bit. So I'm really training my eyes on kind of archive titles, older titles. That's where my interest tends to lie, of course. So, of course, I believe that most of the films made back when are better than most anything that we encounter now. Kind of a downer, but that's how I feel.
Well, we'll get some decades behind us, and we'll see what we, still has some sort of lasting power, if anything.
Yeah, I might be approaching 80 and saying that 2023, those
was a banner year. Well, I mean, there's a lot to talk about tonight. You have contributed to countless releases, like I alluded to. It seems like every time Imprint announces their wave of titles, you're on seemingly like 8 of the 14 discs that they're putting out that month, every month. Kino, you've been doing some stuff for them. You were mentioning before we started that you've been doing something with Canadian International Pictures, and you're getting out there a lot lately. And I'm just happy to see it, because each of the commentaries I've listened to through Imprint, they're pretty remarkable. You're doing really well out there.
Oh, I'm glad to hear you enjoyed them. Yeah, I mean, no matter how much you research a commentary track to cover however much of a runtime you're dealing with, it can be occasionally pretty daunting, and you're just hoping that whatever you're saying is of interest to anybody. Sometimes you can get really deep into the weeds on any number of ancillary subjects, shall we say, that are maybe not so integral to the movie, but you go off occasionally. Maybe I try not to go off on heavy tangents, but I can maybe go off and say this or that and the other thing about that might not be part and parcel, or the pit and the prune juice of what we're actually there to talk about. But I'm hoping always that the commentaries come off well and that people enjoy them. And normally, I mean, I've had a great time collaborating with Alan Arkish, as I mentioned. I think in terms of compadre on these, I figured out not too long ago that Alan and I have collaborated the most. That is followed by Scout Tafoya, who's a very good friend of mine. We've done a bunch together. Scout is a great video essayist, critic, filmmaker, multi-hyphenate. And he, really kind of what I do is one thing. I look at Scout, and he usurps me in many regards for being prolific. So
Right.
Scout might watch this. I don't know.
I'll be sure to send the link over there. Well, yeah, you've done stuff with Scout Tafoya, David Del Valle. There's
is a great friend, and great to hang out with David just in general. David's always the guy that we hang out like an hour or two after the recording is done. Alan and Scout as well, but David and I are really on for a while. But yeah, it's I have my I guess my plum collaborators, I guess, and I'm lucky to be working with them.
Usually with each of the commentators that I seem to gravitate towards, there's usually one or two sort of traits that I tend to associate with that commentator. And it seems like for you, my big thing is I get my longest list of associated things that I am in desperate need to check out after the commentary. Yeah. There are other ones, like I mentioned Frank earlier. I call Frank my tour guide because he does these old Hong Kong ones that you have no idea what's going on in the movie, but he teaches you everything. And with you, it's just it's this roadmap to history. There's so much that is associated to these pieces that you're talking about, and you're eager to share it all with us that are uninitiated plebes, basically. And we're here to learn from somebody that knows what's associated. And it's nice to have somebody that can guide us like that.
Well, that's, I'm flattered. Thank you very much. I've always been interested mostly in, I guess what you might call esoterica or obscuritan cinema.
Yeah.
I've always felt from the time I was a kid that someone needs to be beating the drum for films that are lesser known, and directors who are also lesser known. Furie being my key, like, evangelical cause for the last 15, 20 years. But I have a list of other directors that I think people need to know about. I've actually pitched a number of these people for other director sets at Imprint. Because now that the Furie set is apparently selling pretty well, so it's been easier to pitch certain things, and
nice.
So that's been nice. So I have a list of directors and of course films and everything that I want to see get their due. So I've always my kind of, I guess, if you want to call it a niche, or if you want to call it my kind of my shtick, is really beating the drum for obscure cinema, for films that maybe should be more seen, more known, more talked about, that aren't. Like when I was a kid in a candy store when Frank Tarzi at Kino, gave me Puzzle of the Downfall Child to do, because that's one of my favorite films. It's a film that I admit is not for everybody. But I'm obsessed with it. One of the many films I'm obsessed with that aren't as well known. I was able to get to Bill Ackerman, who's also a good friend of mine, and I was like, Bill, do you want to do Puzzle? Because he also loves that film, and we were both very, we were giddy over that title. So that's just one example of like a film that not many people know about, that we were able to. I mean, Bill and I hopped on an hour-long call with Jerry Schatzberg, which was really, quite lovely to talk to him, one-on-one and prep for our commentary, as well as his interview. There's also a video interview on that particular disc, but we didn't do that. But Bill and I were on with Jerry for about an hour, I want to say, and asking these really really out there questions. Like Bill was, reading about, this or that. It's been a couple years now, but we were asking some real doozies. And Jerry was.
He's a hell of a researcher, I will say that.
Yeah, Bill is formidable. And of course, he contributes a wonderful video essay to the Furie box set in the form of so he's on the Sheila Levine is Dead and Living in New York disc, and he does a piece called I'm so mired in all the titles of all these video pieces. Why Can't I Be Doris Day is the name of it.
Yep.
And he was basically tracing the Sheila Levine from page to screen, from the novel and the movie, which almost has nothing to do with the novel at all. It's like the most radically reimagined novel in movie history when it comes to adaptation. So he was tracing everything that was changed and altered, and so Bill's on there as well.
That is good to hear. He is, again, the amount of research he seems to do is unprecedented on some of these things.
Well, he was asking me at one point, like, do you have any of the drafts of that Gail Parent and Kenny Solms wrote for Sheila Levine? And I was like, Bill, those are lost to history, because first of all, they were never used, because the movie was completely rewritten by the lead actress Jeannie Berlin in that case. So like those are, and when I was researching my book on Furie, of course, years ago, tried to track down every script, but like Bill really wanted to get to the bottom of, like, okay, was there a draft that at least that was closer to the book? And that no one, I've asked people, I've tried to find out, no one seemed to be able to answer it very, very well, but Bill wasn't very interested in that.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like one that would take no for an answer too easy.
Yeah.
So before we get too deep into all of this at the surface level, let's talk about the origin story. Like how, not only the cliche, how did you get into film, but where is Daniel from? How is Daniel, how do you bloom into what you are at this point in your life?
So if I do this on occasion, I'm not doing a Danny DeVito in Tin Man impersonation. I'm just cracking my neck because it gets
fine
sometimes. So my origin story. I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My love, my cinephilia, I guess, stemmed from the fact that I grew up with a very severe stutter. I don't want to use the word debilitating, but it was pretty rough. The friends, my name, it used to take me 2 minutes to get that out. So it was very, very difficult, very challenging. So I, like many people who, get into this, these really intense obsessions, that was my way of escaping, I guess, essentially. I could have gotten this out. It's in my closet over there. There's, my love of obscure cinema stemmed from the TLA video guide, the 1993 edition.
Really, that is very specific.
Very specific. It was no other TLA guide in the wake of that was quite. It was designed that same way. It was. I love the way that the pages were presented, the pictures. They even had like title designs written there, and I was just like, it was. So, my mom used to be a shopaholic. We used to go to these outlet stores. Then my dad used to take me to the bookstore, and I'd pick a book. This TLA guy was in the clearance shelf, and I picked that for my mom shopping consolation prize for the day. This guy was just full of titles that that were, to most people, especially most people in Pittsburgh, pretty obscure, very obscure, hidden, have to dig pretty deep down. But I began reading a lot of these. I remember reading a synopsis of the movie Matrice by Barbet Schroeder with Gerard Depardieu. I had a thing for Gerard Depardieu when I was a kid for some reason. I have no idea why.
I think a lot of people did. That's all right.
I really loved Green Card a lot when I was a kid. And I liked him in it, and I was really wanting to see other films with Gerard Depardieu. So I remember putting that movie Matrice on the list. And of course, it's a movie about a dominatrix, and there's and really kinky shit, and I'm like, and I don't know what the words mean so much. I don't know what the word dominatrix means, it's funny because my mom recently saw this feature-length essay film that I made called it says Zabriskie Point. And I was talking about that film, Zabriskie Point, being my favorite when I was 12. And she had no idea what the hell that movie was about or what it was. They're just like, oh, he's into his thing, and this is what he needs to get. And then like she's seeing all this material from that movie in this new movie, and she's like, oh my God, if I had known, oh my God, what kind of mother was I? I was like, everything turned out fine. Look at look at it, and look, it spawned this other work that
That's true.
Because she was over the moon about the film, but there's a part of her that was like cringing. I was like, oh God, I let you watch that at that age. And so that was kind of funny. But yeah, I made lists of all kind of movies that I didn't quite understand the synopsis for. But if it were accompanied with a picture, that intrigued me. Like, I'm not even kidding. Hand to the Heavens, Salo was on my list because there was a picture from that film, one of the non-X-rated ones, and it was a picture of the priest, and it's a marriage towards the end, and the composition grabbed me, and I didn't know what fascist meant. 11, 12, but it was just these pictures in the book really rearranged my atoms, I guess. So I was like, I really wanted to see what these images were from, the movies that they were from. And then I just, it was like literally like the cartoon Christmas list that kind of unspools onto the ground. I had this literal list that was scotch taped from various printed pieces of paper, and it would just roll down. And I just kept on. As the older I got, the more I dug, the more that I read, the more I like kind of nestled deep into those pages of not just that guide, but any number of critics, and tracking down, going to flea markets in Pittsburgh, which Pittsburgh gets pretty good flea markets, and that was the root of everything. Knew from an early age that I wanted to make films before the TLA guide. I had this idea that I wanted to make movies, and yeah, that's how it all began. Is and then I went to film school in Philadelphia. Met some great people there. I met many people with whom I still work to this day, including my longtime cinematographer, Aaron Hollander, long-suffering cinematographer, who's shot basically everything I've made since I graduated. And now I'm out in San Francisco. Lived in New York for a number of years, and then I moved out to San Francisco. And I have a really good, really solid, robust community here. I mean, not just of like independent filmmaking. We have Rob Nielsen. We have Philip Kaufman is here. Coppola's here. It's a really good ecosystem. Yeah. But also just beyond that, it's the ecosystem for like silent film. We have the biggest silent film festival in the world, which I attend every year. It's a wonderful event that I know many of the organizers and the programmers and the restorationists for. And they're great people, and they really put on a beautiful, beautiful show every year at the Castro Theater, which is interesting goings on swirling around that place nowadays. That theater is undergoing a lot of changes and a lot of tumult. So we'll see where that goes. But they put on a great event. But SF is just a really wonderfully robust film ecosystem, and I'm very happy here. So and I get to go down to LA quite a lot, which is also quite nice.
San Francisco seems like a very underrated repertory cinema theater city as well. There's every time I look, there's a lot more screenings than you would expect there. And I went I'm originally from California, and the time that my wife and I had when we were getting ready to be married was very poor, like most people, and we decided, hey, you work for a hotel chain, let's just road trip through California and get discounts everywhere we go. And we stayed in San Francisco for a few days, and we were just astonished with the number of options. Like, every night there was stuff in the most obscure neighborhoods. There's these random tiny little theaters that you could just get everything from modern horror to classic, like real classic cinema, to underrated foreign. It was, everything was there. It seemed like it was a really, really nice surprise.
Yeah, I mean, man, I'm going to see Secret Ceremony this coming weekend with a couple friends of mine. So yeah, that's it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, San Francisco's nice. I've been there quite a few times growing up in California, and I'm glad that you're out there evangelizing for it, because somebody should be. It's not just tech bros. It seems like that everybody seems to associate with it.
Right. Well, what's also incredible about SF and the Bay Area film scene is it's really close knit or tight knit. Everyone seems to know each other. And everyone, if you're in film, you've probably run into each other at any number of events. And it's so when I'm talking about this, I'm not trying to say that it's small, but I mean, of course, compared to Hollywood and LA, it is.
Right.
But there's a sense of community here that having lived in New York, I didn't find that in the film world there much at all. And living for a time in LA. LA is LA. LA is the machine.
Sprawl.
Yeah, and it's a big sprawl. It's also the movie making machine. Whereas, as I tell people, like even the laundromat proprietors know a little too much about what it is filmmakers do. So that's so. Whereas here, I mean, I can shoot. I'm wearing a shirt of one of my films, actually. If you can see that on the sky, and when we were going around shooting that film, it was amazing because I would just go into restaurants down in North Beach. One place I was across from Esoteric, across from Coppola's building. There was this Indian place that I just walked into, and I was like, I told the person there, I was like, I'd like to shoot a scene here for my movie, and they were over the moon, man. They were like, they didn't ask for any money. They closed it down. They brought out free food, and whatever we asked for, they were just like, they were completely wrapped in what we were up to. Whereas like you could never get away with that. I've filmmaker friends in LA who are just like constantly like, are we going to get, if we shoot guerrilla, we're going to stop by the cops? Is this restaurant where we want to shoot, are they going to charge us an arm and a leg? Whereas like people here, like they want to be involved in something worthwhile, creative, something that So it's a different, I think, vibe as well.
It's special. It's more unique for sure.
Yeah, and I personally think it's the most photogenic city in America. Personally, I just think it really. I think most everywhere you turn, there's a great shot waiting for you. So,
I mean, I would honestly maybe agree with that. The number of times that I've been there, it's really difficult unless it's covered in fog. And even then, that makes for some beautiful pictures sometimes. But it's difficult to not get a good picture out there.
Yeah, we were all around. Like, and of course, we were a little crazy. We went out. I remember we had to get these night shots with like these deserted city streets, and we kind of took a little too much of a risk. We went out at like 1 or 2 a.m., shot until sunrise, going down into like the tenderloin with this equipment and everything. I was a little crazy, and we were a little crazy on that shoot. But hey, nothing happened, and everything turned out fine. It's a nice looking sequence, even if I do say so myself. Aaron shot it very well. So yeah.
This is the perfect way to segue into this, and I will freely admit right now, I am, what is the best way to say this? Like, overwhelmingly unprepared. Not to flatter you even further, but you had been on my list to want to talk to for months now, and it has been obscenely busy for me, and I'd wanted to try to watch everything that you've directed before we got a chance to talk. And on that list, I've been able to cross off a total of 0. But this Sidney J. Furie box set came up, and I was like, God dang it, this is kind of the perfect time because I know that this is Daniel's thing. So I'm glad that we're going to get this opportunity to talk about that. But first, let's talk about you as a filmmaker. Like, where... obviously, you were artistic seemingly from birth, from what you were saying. But, for respecting things like composition, did that come from a love of anything else prior to this catalog? Did that come from, anything that you had seen? Or did you have an appreciation of art from your parents or anything like that?
No, my parents, my mom works in a hospital. My dad worked for Westinghouse. So they are not film people, as you would think. I don't know. I like seeing these shots, these still images from,
Wow.
obscure, often foreign films just kind of got to me. And then, connecting that up with Furie, I saw Ipcris File when I was 11 on, the old Bravo, shall we say. Bravo when they showed old movies back in the day. And normally, like, what was incredible is I would come home from grade school, like, 5th, 6th grade, every day. And Bravo normally had on a 60s British film. And I saw Charlie Bubbles. I saw with Albert Finney. I saw, the Bofors gun. I saw, all these like really obscure British films. That was like my after school special every day. I was like, what weird movie. And one day they had on Ipcris File. And even in the pan and scan, I was just talking with Joe Dante about this, yesterday, the idea of pan and scan, and what that did to a generation of film lovers. Even in the pan and scan, the shots in Ipcris. So the first shot that I ever stole from for one of my movies was from Ipcris File. My little cousin, I don't know. I did this chamber drama when I was like 12, and my little cousin is just like this like willowy housefrau, and like real like Bergman. I hadn't even really seen that much Bergman at that point, but it seemed like serious to me. I could do all these kind of cool shots, and so I put a pair of glasses, on the edge of a dining room table. And I put the camera in a way that if she'd walk to hit her mark, and she'd be obscured by the lens and the pair of eyeglasses. And that was a direct steal from Ipcris File. That's the first that I ever stole. And if I had this interest in, making movies before seeing Ipcris File really crystallized it, because seeing that movie, I was like, there's obviously someone who's composing and creating these really innovative, cool looking shots. This is someone's job. Yeah. And I want that job, and that began my journey with Furie when I was a kid, So yeah, Ipcris was really the movie that really crystallized my, the urgency of my wanting to become a filmmaker, and just generally a film person. Everything that I do under the umbrella of film, I think, comes from. I of course also saw 400 Blows that year, and that was really quite formative. I saw a number of other films, Ipcris with those shots, because that, like, the seeing those shots, as bold as they were, actualized the craft of cinema to me. Yeah. And it made it really immediate, in that sense, for a kid getting into that art form. It was like, you see these shots and someone's doing them, and how are they informing the story being told, with the mood and everything else. And that got really my wheels turning at that point. So yeah, leading from that early stage to me finally realizing, first doing the book on Furie, which was labor of love, tracking him down to, which he's a very private guy, and a lot of people's fingerprints were all over his back to get him to even contact me originally. Right. The first message I ever got from him, this is just with the proviso that we have we have like a 12 or 13-year friendship going on now, and we talk a lot. But his first ever message to me was, "Haven't you anything better to do?" And I didn't know he was joking. I didn't know he was joking because it's an email. So I'm like freaking out, writing this like really sloppy, like, "Mr. Furie, you have no idea what," and I like falling all over myself, apologizing if I've offended you. And he's like, "Oh, no, I'm just joking." And he kind of explained, like, "Listen, I've tried to be a private person and just do my work and make my movies without I've never, he told me later, I never had a publicist or a press agent. Probably why, as his friend Paul Lynch said, probably why he's not the more known than he is. He just completely avoided. I've taken him to parties with like Herzog and a lot of other people through my friendship with Tom Luddy. Tom put me up to bringing Sidney to this party in LA that because Kushner wanted to meet him. And I said, and I got him to come along. And he left after 20 minutes, and he said, "That was the hardest thing I've had to do in years." He's like, he doesn't like that stuff. So like to get him to talk to me, a lot of people were pushing him. Then finally, when he did, he came to New York. We recorded for a few days. I went out to LA. We recorded for a few more days. I interviewed people, and then finally, it's just like he didn't want to talk to anyone who wasn't making films in their own right. He didn't want to talk to a critic. He didn't want to talk to anyone. He wanted someone, if he was going to do it at all, he wanted someone to understand the movie making process.
Yep.
To know what directors go through, to know what a movie set is actually like, to know what the process is, to know the kind of the agony and the ecstasy of the whole shebang, So that was really what pushed him, I think, ultimately, other than the people. It's like, well, he makes his own movies. That's different. So then eventually we got to know each other. Then, then finally, the commentary thing and everything else with that, making a career out of it, amazingly enough, happened over the pandemic, because I was doing them as like, kind of on a limited basis prior to the lockdown. And I was working as an archivist locally, as a film archivist, working hands-on with film elements, and doing hot splices and repairing films so that they were good, that they were healthy enough to go through the scanning machines.
Yeah.
So working firsthand with that, and and also making my movies and doing my thing. So I remember it was like just before the lockdown. It was like a few months before the lockdown, and I did Heartbeeps. Heartbeeps was one of my first ones. Well, no, rewind. I did The Taking of Beverly Hills, which is one of the later Furie movies when he really gets into like Hollywood action films. Yeah. And I did that with Howard Berger, who's a good friend of mine nowadays. And then I told the Frank, who was happy with that track, is that I'd like to do more. And I think I got the remaining crumbs, the remaining droppings after the other more exalted people in the commentary go. And I was like, oh, no one wanted Heartbeeps? I'll do Heartbeeps. I'm weirdly obsessed and fascinated by that movie because it's
Heartbeeps is great.
It's the slowest children's movie and ever made. I think it's glacially paced, but it's so fascinating.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I'm going to go the extra mile. I'm going to track down Alan Arkush and see if he wants to do this with me. And and then convinced Alan. And I said, Alan, I'm going to be down, and I didn't know him. That was a cold call. And I said, I'm going to be down in LA. Maybe I could come over. We can do it there. He said, sure. And then we did it. And I was told that disc sold a whole lot better because the director was on. And the commentary, I read the reviews at the time, and it was like, don't buy this for the movie. Buy it for the commentary. And I think that was when Frank was just like, oh yeah, we'd like to work more with you, I think was how that worked. And I took the movies like the Public Eye with Joe Pesci. I tracked down Howard Franklin for that, and I kept on doing them until it got to the point where I was like, oh yeah, you're now officially in the rotation. And I was like, this is all cool and everything, but I don't know if I can make like a living at this. I need to probably look. And then the more I did, the more these other companies came and said like, we'd like you to do this. And like, and then I got into video essays. And then like, it kept on building and building and building, and one thing led to another. And now it's just like, wow, that's how that happened. It's like looking back on it, it's kind of a whirlwind, but you know, it was pretty wild that I was just like, yeah, this is cool, however long this lockdown lasts. But who knows? I mean, because Frank Warren, I took like 5 before the lockdown, and Frank was like, "Are you sure? Are you sure you can handle all these? I'm just checking." I said, "Yeah, great." And then when the lockdown happened, boy, was I happy to have those. Something to do.
And the lockdown is really what brought Imprint out as well, because they started, I believe their first release was May of 2020, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's about right, I think.
They've just exploded since then, and you've been fairly regular on a lot of their items. How did you break into Australia? Was there just a relationship there?
No, well, this is interesting. I've been, so Scorpion would contact me, AGFA. I did a contract for AGFA for a Furie film, actually, interestingly enough. There you go. Great movie. My favorite Furie film, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. Love
That's
that.
high praise.
Love that film. Ipcris and Leather Boys are my 2 favorites. Yeah, I love that film, really. And then, you know, Scream Factory, I did, you know, I have a list of the company. I think I've worked for like 16 companies at this point in time.
Wow.
And then when I saw that Imprint was putting out their Harry Palmer box set, I wanted that, of course, for obvious reasons, because that had Ipcris and it had Funeral in Berlin and it had $1 Billion Brain. And then I saw, there you go. Great.
I was trying to get the lid on for a minute because these things are crazy. But yeah, this box set was incredible.
Yeah, it's the one and only Harry Palmer box set in the world, I think.
This is what it had in it.
Yeah, those are beautiful. Then I was like, oh my God, but it's so expensive.
Yeah.
And then I was like looking, I was like, oh, they licensed my commentary track. Oh, with which I did with Troy Howarth, and I was like, I wonder if I can finagle a free copy out of them for, you know. And I found a contact, I forget how, and I emailed the guy there. And I said, hey, I worked on you featured my Ipcris file commentary on your Harry Palmer set. Possible to get one of those? And he's like, yeah, sure. And then I was like, great, thank you. And then, you know, sent it off, and I was like, hey, if you're looking for any other contributors, I'd love to work with you guys. And he's like, well, what kind of things are you into? I was like, 60s, 70s, mostly obscure stuff. I know that it's been interesting. I was talking with one of my other friends about this recently in the commentary world. It seems that the horror genre is pretty well covered. There's a pretty solid foundation of like horror and giallo commentators, and I like a lot of those movies, but I feel like I don't need to, you know, work on those. I did Happy Birthday to Me because it was there's a producer, Douglas Hosdale, was just like, hey, do you want to, he just offered to me, do you want to do Happy Birthday for Me? I got one of the writers. And I was like, at first I was like, you sure you don't want one of the actual like horror?
Right.
I was like, I'll do it. I'll happily do it. I love talking about J. Lee Thompson, and I mean, if you want me to do it, I was like, yeah, man, great. Yeah, because I think I'd made a good impression as the moderator for the Breaking In commentary with Bill Forsyth and John Sayles, which was the funnest track I think I've ever done out of like over 100 now. That was a riot. That was so fun. Funniest moment in anything I've ever recorded. I don't even know if it made the final because MGM tends to cut up their final tracks. So I don't know if it's on the final track. What happened was John Sayles, who I knew a bit through Trailers from Hell and through Joe, was like, you know, so Bill, how many weeks did you have on this shoot? And Bill, who's a very charming, lovely Scotsman, said, We just had the one. It was called The Peace. It was imported from Italy. John and I are looking at each other on the call, and we're like, "What?" And John realized before I did, like, "Oh, are you talking about his wig?" And he's like, "Yeah, isn't that what you were asking me about?" And no. I said, "How many weeks did you have?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want to rewind this?" And John had to carry the torch for the next few minutes because I was out, like, holding my sides. So God bless John Self. But anyway.
Oh man, that's fantastic.
But they liked how I moderated that track, so I think it was like they gave me Missing in Action 2. I didn't ask for that. There's like, "Oh, we got the director of that. Can you moderate?" They gave me Extreme Adventures of Super Dave, which is, if I can editorialize for a moment, that's the worst movie I've ever done a commentary for.
That's not shocking.
But one of the funnest tracks. And I'll tell you why. Peter McDonald, the director, was on the track with me. And Peter McDonald came from an operating background. He operated for Jeffrey Unsworth for many years. So he was on the set of 2001 and Murder on the Orient Express and a bunch of other movies. And it's another one of those examples, like, don't buy the movie for the movie, buy it for the commentary.
Of course.
But before I logged on, Peter's like, another charming Englishman is like, "So what do you think about this film?" And I was like, I'm glad you said that. I don't think much of it either, but we have plenty of other things to talk about. I was like, good, yes. So we just talked about everything. Other than probably we touched on the movie a few times just for good measure, and we just we had a really so that was a lot of fun. The movie wasn't great, but the track is worth getting.
Gotta love honesty like that.
Yeah. But I was just like, I said yes to everything that they've ever offered me. Mostly, especially about moderating, because I can. And then, of course, they also gave me Some Girls in that package, which is a film I've always quite liked. So with Michael Hoffman, the writer-director on the track. So,
nice.
But yeah, how did we get on this moderating?
I don't know, but it works because it's all interesting and all things that I've wanted to talk about anyways, because there's a lot there, and the number of boutiques that you've been a part of, it's not easy like people think to just break into 16 different companies like you're mentioning right now. There's a lot of handshakes that need to be made. There's a lot of people that need to be relationship.
It was a total snowball effect. Like I said, I didn't expect this to become a gig, like a day job of any kind. I've been able to make it work, which is crazy. Did not think this would happen. But like, it really, like, I would continue to get good notices for the tracks. And, there was people would send me, comments on the message boards about some track I had done, and talking about me as a commentator. And then I just was getting offers being floated, and it's kind of and to talk about the horror base, which like I said, pretty well covered. They got a lot of good people covering horror and giallo and all that. It's kind of nice because I feel more comfortable doing my weirdo obscure.
Yeah.
Films. That's my niche, if I have one. Is like, if a film is interesting film of any genre needs to be if it needs a cheerlead, I'll do that. And I'll do the research into it, and having contacts through that's a whole other story, how I got my list of Hollywood contacts. I can normally track down people, at least for research. If not, they'll join. If they don't join, they'll at least talk to me beforehand and give me a base of knowledge. So that also, I think, is attractive to a lot of the labels. Is I can normally go through channels to get to people to talk to them or whatnot. So that's also been useful.
Yeah, and some of these people, some of the stories I've heard just interviewing some of these other commentators, Sidney was private enough, but there are others that have been out of the scene since one film that they did in 1967, and you're wanting to talk to them now in, 2022. That's not as easy as just pick up the phone and call somebody. It's a completely different world.
Well, that's how Craig Wasson happened recently. He was probably one of the last of the boys in Company C that I had yet to talk to. But if you go on to IMDb Pro or any of these sites that have the agent rep and everything, he's got nothing. He's got out of the biz. He hasn't acted in a movie since 2006, I think. Wow. So it's like, how do I track him down? And then, like last ditch efforts, like my last weeks leading up to turning all these video assets in for the final package. And I was like, let's try to contact Craig Wasson one last time. So I Google him and I find this interview from like 10 years ago, and it's Craig is interviewed. And I was like, oh, someone interviewed him. It's a while ago now, but they interviewed him. So I was like, okay, well, let's try to contact the guy who runs this site. And I put the whole spiel out, and then I wake up that very next morning, and I said, "Hey, I checked in with Craig, and he wants me to give you his email, so here you go." Wow. And I email him immediately upon like in my bed, still upright, texting on my phone, and this email message, and then within literally 1 minute, I get this email from Craig Wasson. Like, hey man, yeah, sure. I'm not sure if my Zoom works. That might be a challenge. But if you can we do a test? Like, I can jump on a test right now if you want. Sure, I'll send a Zoom invite out, and cool. And so I got on with Craig, and Craig was just like, hey, how you doing? Good to hear Sidney Furie. Wow, and I was like, yeah. So, well, your Zoom works, so that's good news. And it's like, so when do you want to do the actual interview? It's like, how about now? Yeah. Let's do it. And so that was funny how that happened. So normally, sometimes those type of things happen. There is one star in my history who was untenably nasty. He shall remain nameless, but I was dealing with this guy for a few weeks, and it was terrible. And it got to the point when Josh at Imprint was just like, "Yeah, let's just dump this. This is not worth it." Sending him the messages I was getting from this guy, and I was like, I'm not doing much. I'm trying to be as placating and nice as possible, but read this stuff. And he's like, yeah, mate, sorry, we're gonna, let's just dump it. And so that also happens, and it's unfortunate that he, we couldn't nail him down, but it was just like, we just knew it was going to be a nightmare. So.
Well, you brought up Imprint again. Let's dive into Furie, and then after Furie, we'll go into your works as a filmmaker. Once I saw that we were going to be doing this, said, let me go pull up some of my favorites just to sort of give the template for those that don't know Furie at all. And I will be flat out honest here. I had not really known Furie as an auteur. It's not one of those names that when I watched these films in particular that I went, oh, I have to know this director. I will say one of them, which is the Ipcris File, which I love. This comes across as a very deliberate film. Every single thing in this movie has a reason. Somebody looked at this and went, no, I want this to look exactly like this in the angle that we're filming this. But these others, I almost couldn't tell that they were done by the same person until you really start to dive in. And I love the Leather Boys, just like you. And then the other big one that a lot of people probably don't even realize is Sidney J. Furie is The Entity. I actually really love this movie. I think this is super underrated. But why don't you give us just a little primer on Sidney J. Furie, and then we'll dive into this actual box set that's coming.
I actually thought that you were going to say Iron Eagle, because I get that a lot.
No, not yet. That's it's good.
Yeah, I remember when I was first doing the book years ago, there was a person that I've known from a while ago, and I was like naming like, oh, he did Ipcress File, Lady Sings the Blues, Entity, and there's like, huh. And then like, they were like looking at the list of credits, like, he did Iron Eagle? That was like, yes, that just, completely, that takes the, center stage, headline.
Right.
But yeah. So Furie to me is hands down always been an O-tier, and it's interesting because the writers who so Brad Stevens, who does he works for BFI Sight and Sound a lot, and David Cairns, who writes for the Criterion Daily. He and all the other participants were like close to like kind of nailing down what makes a Furie film, and a lot of them in their writing and in their work really came up with some good stuff. And then I think it was really when to buckle down and to watch his filmography from beginning to end, you really begin to see not just the visual currents and the visual style that became really his after a while. The main video essay piece that I did, which is called Clear Lines of Sight, which is like I think it's on the first disc. It's in the box set in the Lawyer. So if you begin with the Lawyer and you go to the extra feature called Clear Lines of Sight, I kind of see that as a good primer for people to kind of look at him as a director with a particular pair of eyes and things that he's thematically and otherwise attempting to achieve. It's all I attempt to cover that all and connect all the films, in that piece. So really, I mean, you're looking at a guy in the early part of his career. Yes, he was making a lot of films about youth in trouble, I guess you might say. And kind of the idea of adult society not being able to answer to the either the demands or the dreams or whatever of these young characters. Beginning with, he made the first two modern English Canadian feature films in their history, really. When I say modern, like there was a couple of loose examples that didn't get much of any play, and there was no Canadian film industry when Sidney began. He made these two films independently with money of friends and family, which is pretty amazing back in 1956. So A Dangerous Age, A Cool Sound from Hell, both have this kind of thematic bent to them. But if you look even beyond this youth layer, this youth dimension, you get this idea of wounded masculinity and male anxiety. Like even if you look at the Ipcress File, things that were the people in charge at the time were just like worried about is like this is a guy with glasses hooks for a girl. Like, and to use their word, they're going to think he's a F word. And that was a concern at the time that the movie was about to come out. Is like they thought it was going too far in that regard. And like the woman makes the move on the guy by taking off his glasses. Like these are not archetypes or whatever that anyone was used to seeing. These weren't signifiers that the audience was used to experiencing in movies. And then if you look at the Brando and Sinatra films, it's the same thing. It's like these guys and critics of the day would say like they're Brando doesn't act out much. He doesn't assert himself much in the Appaloosa beyond them thinking that Ipcress File style, which got repeated into Appaloosa and The Naked Runner, which Joe Dante talks about. Those three movies were very important to him at the time, and. But if you look at that, these are three movies about men who don't act, but they're acted upon, And I mean, Brando loses the big arm wrestling match in the movie, and he's not this like virile hero at all. He's like almost killed by a killer scorpion when John Saxon wrestles his arm to the ground, and like he has to depoison in order to eventually win, but it's a Pyrrhic victory in a way. And then like Naked Runner is Sinatra at his most like another character who's just acted upon. He's just, he barfs in one scene of the movie from the stress. And then like Foss and Halsey, you get like repeats of images from the Leather Boys, and there's kind of a little homoeroticism in Little Foss and Big Halsey sometimes. There's like, even a couple lines in Charles Eastman's script that kind of allude to it. And then, it really, like, they were hard to miss. It was hard for me, at least, to miss these things, these elements. And of course, Leather Boys was revolutionary in the day.
It is so good.
Because Victim was, the Dirk Bogarde movie, and of course it's like, when I talked to Dudley Sutton years ago, who played the role in the Leather Boys, he was I should say, he died. He was a really lovely guy, a real card, a real personality, but really, really charming, and had a lot of heart. And he was like, "Oh, I hated Victim because it's all in the title." And it's like I didn't want to play a victim, and of course, Pete is the I'm gay. I'd run off with Pete to New York at the end of that. Gladly. I think he's a fun, charming, lovely guy, and
right.
And to me, it's like it's not that the Reg character is running from him; he's running from himself. I'll tell you how formative the Leather Boys was for my life. That movie inspired me to come out.
Wow,
that's a big deal. Wow. That really got. It's like, I was hiding for a while, and not. I was in the shadows with everything, and then like seeing Reg at the end walk away from, really, I think he knows what he's walking away from. It's like, and that was a moment where it's like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be like that. And hell, like, you have to be crazy to not run off with Pete. I was like, and really, like, it grabbed me when the Dudley Sutton character said, "What about me?" when Reg is leaving him at the end. And it really, really got to me.
Wow.
But the Boys, and During One Night is a crazy movie, which no one in America, hardly anyone in the UK has seen, which is about a sexually impotent World War II pilot who wants to lose his virginity before he dies in combat. But he can't get it up because he's so afraid of death, and he's so afraid of like not measuring up in terms of the manhood thing. And this is a part of a picture. It's like really fascinating, like seeing these things repeated. And then eventually it leads up to The Entity, and it's like Barbara Hershey against what is a very male presence that is doing these awful things to her. And kind of the ultimate wounded male, the ultimate, lashing out, asshole presence, who's doing these awful things to her, this demon or whatever. But we know it's a male presence. So if you tie all that up, it goes all the way up to ladybugs, for fuck's sake. Tony Dangerfield dresses his son up, his stepson up in a dress. Whether or not you want to admit that Ladybugs is just tourist work,
it's pretty great.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And I'm not saying that now for whatever reason that I think that Sidney is a happily married man, not gay, very, very hetero, very, very straight, but a supporter and an advocate. 6 kids, he had 6 kids, has a big family. But I think he was drawn to this, and you see this emerge in Boys of Company C, this idea of duty, commitment. All these war pictures that he made in later years were this idea of male camaraderie, which also gets addressed in, It and Leather Boys and a bunch of his other films. So all these threads kind of are they're kind of braided through all the films, I think, or at least the ones that he took special care to kind of imbue himself in them. So yeah, that's where I'm coming up from with Furie. I'm constantly like when I'm on a set as a director. So someone said recently, I was kind of stuck with a really not a great set to work with. It was kind of tight, and it was and the actors and the crew. My one actor was just like, "You look like a caged animal right now. What the hell?" I was like, I'm trying to figure out how to get some depth in these shots.
Right.
So I don't want to shoot up against a wall. There's always this little Sidney Furie on my shoulder saying, "You're not going to frame it like that, are you?" He was actually on a set once with me, one of my sets, and he was looking at the monitor of this very Furie-esque shot that I was lining up. It looked really nice, and he was looking over my shoulder, and I was like, "What do you think?" And he's like, "It's a nice shot." And I was like, "Well, I got it all from you." And he's like, "But they beat all that out of me."
That's a hell of a compliment from the man himself, though.
And he did. I remember one night he did clapboard for us because we had everyone on deck. We had no one to do the slate, and my DP meekly asks him, "Sidney, he just came up to watch us. He loves being on set. He wanted to know how we did it, kind of very low budget." And he's like, "Sidney, can you do the slate for us?" And he just goes, "I've done nearly 50 movies. I've never even touched a slate. Do I get to rehearse?"
Oh man, that's got to be intimidating too to have somebody like that to grab the slate.
Yeah. Well, I have the original footage of him doing scene 28 or doing whatever he did. So this nice memento.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Felt bad putting him in that position, but he didn't mind.
Well, Imprint comes along, and out of nowhere, they announce this. This is like the seminal box set for somebody that has not been given a lot of, at least in grand physical media fashion, a lot of attention in the way that he's getting with this box set. And it's first off, in your piece, it was mentioned by Dante that it's nice that he's alive for this, which is astonishing. It's rare that for somebody that has had this many decades worth of influence gets a chance to see some level of respect like this. So I'm sure there's some relief for you in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, well, yes, I was going to mention earlier. You actually just rang my bell here with this. The opening of the long essay piece, Clear Lines of Sight. There's a transcript from so back in 1968, they had this Director's Choice series that was sponsored by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. And they invited a number of directors to the Academy Theater to screen a film of their choosing to talk to film students then. And it included Hitchcock, Frankenheimer, King Vidor, and the list is it's recounted. You see the Academy bulletin where they're all listed and there are pictures of them at the screenings. And so Furie was representing the kind of the new guard, the young guard. And so the transcripts of the dialogues with the students exist. And if you want to access any of them, you go to the Margaret Herrick Library in LA, or you email them, and they can fetch whatever transcript from that series that you want. But so Furie gets up there, and this is like I said, it was November 1968, and these kids at the time, these film students are saying, like, you're like a legend in the business, and everyone knows what a Furie shot is. It's like legend. They use the word legend in the transcript, and like all these other film students are basically very like kind of in awe of this younger guy than they've gotten theretofore, because they had gotten all these other older directors. The young guy who had achieved that much at that point, he was like the young hotshot, and so that's what he was then. And he continued, like as Joe said, and Joe Dante said in the piece, he continued to make a number of hits, but Sidney always ran from the attention of that. And now that he's 90, and he wants to make one last movie, but we'll see. He made two independently financed movies. One is kind of he wanted it to be, as he said at the time, like a Little Miss Sunshine, which that movie actually got finished but never released. And then he made another film, which is a Holocaust themed film. The first one had an interesting cast. You had Stan Shaw from Boys of Company C, Michael Lerner, who recently passed away. Interesting working with him. I got a lot of stories about Michael Lerner. Tony Todd, Mr. Candyman. I feel like I'm forgetting some people. Anyway, yeah. So they're in that, and then Hannah Cohen, or as it became known as Finding Hannah, was his most recent film, and that's a Holocaust film about has a great pitch. I remember when he first told me the pitch, I was like, that sounds like a great movie. And it's about a man who, he's a Holocaust survivor. He had a childhood sweetheart in Europe, and they were sent off to the camps. He lost track of her. He survived. He's going to Israel to interview 5 Hannah Cohens, because Hannah Cohen, common Jewish name, right?
Yep.
5 Hannah Cohens who are all survivors, who all could be his Hannah.
Wow.
So he's trying to find this woman, and so he recast Barry Newman from The Lawyer, and Dinah Muldaur also from The Lawyer. They play husband and wife in The Lawyer. So on the Lawyer disc, you see a clip from a sample from this new Hannah movie, and so there's a kind of an arc to The Lawyer, in that the actors in The Lawyer, Barry Newman and Dinah Muldaur, are reunited for this movie 50 years later. So yeah, that's a really, really special part of that particular disc.
That's astonishing. I hope that gets released. That sounds amazing to be able to see out there.
Well, that one, Hannah is touring Jewish film festivals at the moment, so
wow.
It's making the rounds right now. So yeah,
very nice. So you put together seemingly like everything for this box set. You're basically the main person behind it, and I got to admit, as meekly as you keep sharing this original piece that you did, the Clear Lines of Sight. Man, not to just wax poetic to the person in front of me, but it is an astonishing piece. I mean, even as far as like visual essays go, it's longer than most, and it's still like I could have had another 40 minutes and I would have been happy. It was just a beautiful piece to see these establishing shots for a career stacked on top of each other and just get mind blown over and over again for somebody that has been doing this for so long, and see somebody that has inspired the people that has inspired this generation, and for him to just continue to be a part of the zeitgeist for that long is immense, and you captured so much of it just beautifully.
I mean, thank you so much. He might be the longest continuously working filmmaker, to wit. I can't, I mean, he's been working consistently for 60 years.
Yeah, that's
as a director.
That's insane.
I mean, it is insane. I mean, he made his first film in 1956, and he still wants to do more. I mean, it's like, and this is a man who, this is the thing he loves doing the most. He said, maybe other people in my class maybe retired early, and they would, rest on their laurels. Maybe they'd play golf. Movie making is my golf. I love it. And to hear him talk about it, it's like there's nothing like getting to the set before anyone gets there in the morning, which he does. I actually ran into him one morning when he was like all alone with his little coffee, walking around thinking of what he was going to do that day. And being alone, and then the really like the hands-on crew, the grips and everything began to show up. And he's like, and then you get a donut with them, and you say, "What's the shit for today?" That's his exact words. So, and he really loves it. He loves. I've met a lot of people in the film industry, a lot of directors. I have never met someone who loves the filmmaking process as much as he does. It's out of every pore of him, and it's really inspiring. People who worked on those sets can't believe he's as old as he is.
That's immense. I mean, if he makes something in 2 years, that's literally 70 years, basically, from creation one to this. That would be that's just insane to think about. The amount of influence that he's actually had over people.
Yeah. No, I mean his fingerprints are all over. In my opinion, and I think I could back this up. His fingerprints are really all over modern film vocabulary, and a lot of the visual syntax that we have come to take for granted over the years, which were kind of people reacted to maybe either with great adulation or adversely when it was first on the scene way back when. But I mean, a lot of the filmmaking vocabulary and a lot of the what he's contributed, I think, is still at play in the modern filmmaking industry. And I think we've had a measurable impact in ways that it's not just that people don't recognize. It's that because he's as obscure as he is,
Right.
I think unjustly, unwarrantedly. People just don't know. It's not that they don't reckon it; they just don't know yet. I'm hoping that and that's been making the rounds. That's been improving the last 5-10 years. I think the more the films that were unavailable come back onto the marketplace. Like Leather Boys was MIA for a lot of years. It was only available on an early Kino video disc from 2001. In a really bad, a really bad transfer, and not even proper anamorphically enhanced widescreen.
Of course,
but just the black bars and if you actually cropped and everything and blew it up, it's a mess. It's so that was really really muddy. The blacks are mid gray, and it's just artifacty and everything else. But the Agfa and Shout Factory did a beautiful job on the new Leather Boys. Now that film's back out there, now that Ipcris is back out there, now that these films are about to hit the market again, Entity got a bunch of new additions, including the one that I worked on by Scream Factory. One of my early commentaries, don't judge me by that, when I was still getting my commentary. That was 2018, I think. So that the more that these movies get out there and the more that people see them, the more that people see these special editions for them, the more that, the more I mean, it's amazing about this set because the lawyer and Sheila Levine have never had any video release at all. Not even a VHS back in the day,
Yeah. And that seems to be Imprint specialty, that they somehow are getting some of these films that have never had a release, never had an HD release, never had a disc release, something. And they're like, here's this wonderful gift to the world. You have to import it from Australia because nobody else will ever have it.
Right. I know, they've done the Lord's work, as they say. I mean, the exciting thing is that, these two films, Sheila Levine is one of my favorite films of his. And it was trashed in a lot of quarters at the time, but nowadays, if you go to the Letterboxd site or go to the Turner Classic Movies user reviews, people love Sheila Levine when they've been able to catch it, when they've been able to see it, and you see all these things like, when is this movie ever going to be on video so that I can get it? I love this movie. And this is a very small coterie who've been able to even access that and see it and write that. So the fact that it'll be out there more, these new scans are gorgeous, and Sheila has never looked better. I've seen many permutations over the years. One of the extra features on the disc actually is a history of Furie's pan and scans, which I've saved, and it's there. they're bananas. They're just, and when you watch the bit with Joe Dante that I sent you before this,
There's a
Joe
big part of that.
was talking about pan and scan and everything. We're talking about the idea of pan and scanning and the people who did it. And it's like these guys didn't know composition, and
Right.
as Joe said, it's amazing that these films have survived at all with their reputations intact after what they did to them. After all these years. And Sheila is definitely. I have a pan and scan of that. That is unspeakable, but fascinating, but unspeakably bad, like unwatchable.
And one of the things Joe Dante pointed out is that some of these shots, just because people don't know composition, you would think that, well, let's at least leave any semblance of artistic merit. But when you're zooming in on like an ear or an over-the-shoulder shot of somebody, and there's literally nothing visible in some of these shots. What were they thinking? And on top of that, like the psychological question arises is how did this still have meaning to people when you could look at this and say, yeah, this is not good.
Actually, one of my pet projects is maybe a feature-length video essay or essay film about pan and scan. And because I'm talking to Joe about this, I didn't use it in the final video because I wanted as little as me in that piece as possible. I just wanted it to be Joe. But we had an actual conversation at various points during that, and I was like, I was another one of these guys who grew up watching pan and scans thinking that I was getting the full experience of the movie.
Yeah.
I would watch a movie like Soylent Green on a pan and scan, and I'd be like, what the hell's with that shot? That's completely out of focus. Oh, what shoddy filmmaking.
Right.
Not realizing that to the left in an area of the screen that I can't see is in focus. And if you see like the naked runner on a pan and scan, it cuts from a shot in focus of Sinatra to another part of that same frame with the woman out of focus.
Completely out of focus.
Completely a blur. And it's just like, people who don't know any better just think it's crappy filmmaking,
Yeah.
So it's like, experiencing that. And of course, like pan and scan, certain companies had different aesthetics for pan and scan. So MGM would have this weird lurch across a frame that was so awkward. Sony or Columbia would have this like zoom across the frame that would give you motion sickness. And then Paramount and Universal like to cut within the same frame. Every house, every studio had a different way of doing it. So depending on what company got the film out there, you were going to be seeing a different representation of that movie. I remember seeing Rosebud by Otto Preminger on VHS back when, and there's a conversation between Peter O'Toole and another character, might have been Cliff Gorman, and Peter O'Toole is on the far right side of the frame, and Cliff Gorman's far left. And the pan scanner must have fallen asleep because it's fixed in the middle, and you can't see either of them. It's like, is this experimental now all of a sudden? So yeah, there's this pan. So Furie has not been served well by pan and scan. Actually, the subtitle of the piece that I did is "The Man Who Wouldn't Be Cropped." So yeah, you can look forward to that piece on one of the discs.
It brings to mind many memories of, I grew up in a VHS house like many of us, and absolutely hating some of these pan and scan versions. But then I became the age where I wanted to start collecting some of this physical media, and my grandparents,
things,
my grandparents, being none the wiser, would gift something for Christmas, and I'd be like, oh, thanks, and then get in the car, and my parents would smack me like, why are you so disrespectful? I'm like, it's not widescreen, we got to go return this.
Beautiful.
Oh yeah, those were the days. I'm so glad that we've grown past that. And actually, I mean, that's a good point to bring up with today's like boutiques. It seems like we have a generation of individuals that have yearned to respect these so well that we're getting things in the original aspect ratio that have never been released that way. We're getting things uncut that have never been released that way. We're capturing the voices of some of these people that, like, Sidney is 90 years old, and if we don't capture those stories now, they're gone forever soon.
Yeah, exactly. I will say that. So Sidney did 3 of the commentary tracks for the disc. For Boys and Company C, I had to rely on old audio that I recorded of him 10 years ago, and then for the lawyer track, I did that with Paul Lynch, who did Prom Night and is Sidney's best friend for many years. And he has been on a number of commentary tracks with him over the years, including for his Cliff Richard films back in the early 60s. But Sidney has been fighting something health-wise recently. I'm not going to say more than that. I probably said too much already. But I had to rely. But yeah, keep getting people on the record about about these things is it's important, and there's a ticking clock when it comes to this stuff a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You never know, how long, people are going to last, even if they're not old. It's just like there's this urgency that a lot of us feel, I think, about getting people on the record before it's too late. Maintaining history and oral history, and keeping the fight to, keeping a record of our filmic heritage intact in these little strides that, and I'm proud to be among the people doing it day in and day out. You've had a lot of people like this on your show, I know.
It helps. It helps to bring people that are inspired by this sort of thing, that are allowing the current consumer market to be inspired as well. It's an odd, like, the best way to explain it is like a Big Brother program, basically. Like, let's hop along on this film journey with you and just have you guide us through this amazing discovery of something. And with this box set specifically, how do you feel about these set of films as a whole for somebody maybe they've never seen Sidney's work at all? Is this a good intro, or do you think they should start with something else first?
This is an interesting question, because my best friend, who's also my cinematographer, whom I mentioned earlier, we always talk about we have a game that we kind of play. One is the entry-level film game, and the other is the testament film game. So entry-level film is like, if you want to introduce someone to a director that they've never heard of, what film do you begin with? So you just name a director, and then it's like, okay, entry-level is blah, blah, blah. Really? I say it's that because blah, blah, blah. And then let's say that, like, it's kind of a game, and it's kind of just like it's one of our various black hole activities. If people don't know film, they're just like swallowed by our nerdiness. But the other is the testament film game, and that is the idea that is a French term. Actually, the French said that a testament film is a single film summation of everything that director is about. Contains all the kind of the earmarks, all the trademarks, all the marks, all the marks, all the visual, like everything, all the DNA is in one neat package. All the artistic in one neat package in this one movie. Thankfully, in this set, for me, I told you what my 2 favorite Furie films are, but his testament film is Boys and Company C. He loves that film more than any other film, I think.
Wow.
He'll normally mention that, and everyone who worked on that loved working on that film. There wasn't a single person who was bitter or had anything bad to say about it. Everyone had one of the best artistic experiences of their lives.
Nice.
And Sidney loves that film, and like that was a much needed respite after the floppage of Gabriel and Lombard, which is a terrible ordeal. And that was like really not only, I wouldn't say it's him redeeming himself, but it's like he needed that after that. And he made it on nothing. He'd ask for, when he was getting, as he said in the commentary, in his commentary for Company C, or the commentary that I prepared from old audio, it's like I said I don't need to be paid anything when I was getting $100 or $200 per picture. I was like, I don't need paid for this. I need to do this movie. And he co-wrote it himself. Rick Natkin was the co-writer. He's on the commentary track that wound up on the disc, where it was Rick Natkin and Andre Morgan are the co-screenwriter and the producer. And And so they were on that. But like, everyone says that this was Sid's baby, and after all these years, it still is. He loves that film dearly, and that to me is a really good summation of Furie, of his cinema. It's male camaraderie. It's all the male stuff. And then it's something that he was really engrossed by in later years, which is this the kind of the phenomenon of war. He really got into in later years. But that in his trademark visual style is also very much present in that film. Very, very beautiful widescreen work in that film. Boys and Company C is a great film that I'm glad that we got. We almost didn't get it.
Oh, interesting.
The set. That's the only film in the set that's not Paramount. And I begged Josh at Imprint. I begged him, and like Josh was like, I'm looking into it, mate. I'm looking into it. And we'll see. And I was like, oh God, please, if you can do anything to come and see, very important. And then like he was like, oh no, and it is like there was some period when it looked like it was going to completely fall apart.
Jeez.
And then finally, I'm at a bar with a friend, and I get the email. It's like, all right, mate, we got. I heard Josh's voice. We got Boys and Company C. I'm getting another drink. We got it. Yeah. But yeah, I'm glad. I'm thrilled that film is in there with like that's the most crowded disc too. That is. We were worried that we were gonna max out on the disc space on Company C because just of all the extras on it. And it's just a lot of stuff on that disc. And I love Sheila Levine. We have an interesting commentary track by Sam Deegan.
Yeah.
Who does a really, really interesting track talking. I felt that it was appropriate to have, we have a lot of dudes on that disc.
Yeah.
Bill Ackerman, Scout Tafoya. We have a couple others on the disc. Cairns is on that disc. And we have Sidney and me on the commentary track. And I was like, this is a film about a woman. It's kind of an ode to the 40s and 50s women's pictures, like, the kind of the Warner Brothers, the best of everything, which was Fox. And I was like, Sam Deegan is always been one of my favorite commentators. So I was like, I went to Sam and I was like, Sam, do you want to do Sheila Levine? I'd love you to do this. And she immediately agreed. She's very happy to do it, and I'm happy that that's on there. And much needed perspective on that film. But I love that film very much. Hit is another favorite of mine. I love Hit. Little Foss and Big Halsey is. I think that's not an entry level film. I think that's the deeper you get into Furie. I think that's further down along the line. The Lawyer is one of the more anonymous pictures in that, and at least in that period. But as Paul Lynch and I pointed out in the commentary track, it's like, Sidney still can't help himself sometimes. It's like a couple of the frames. It's like, oh yeah, there's one of his shots. It's right there. And as Paul said, Sidney just can't help himself sometimes. He's got to shoot in a certain way. If he sees a shot, he's going to get it. The Lawyer is one of the more anonymous pictures of his, but it's worth seeing still. And it's the first ever video release of it, so it's enough reason to celebrate. I wish we could have gotten Lady, but Lady was caught up in the 50th. I'm talking about Lady Sings the Blues. Yep. I believe that was caught up in the 50th anniversary celebration of the film that Paramount did for it. So, alas, but that of course got a nice new Blu-ray, so people should track that down.
Any of his other films that have been lost for quite some time that you think could possibly see another release soon, or hoping to see another release soon?
We've been hoping for years to get a Cool Sound from Hell release, which is one of his early Canadian films. We screened that we premiered that actually at the Toronto Film Festival back in 2016.
Wow.
And it was a sold out show because this is okay. Piece of history, little context. This is a film shot in 1958 in Toronto. This is a Canadian movie. This is a Toronto film. it was never once screened in Toronto or in Canada at all. Sidney, he emigrated to England right after that. Because Canada, no one wanted to show Canadian films in Canada. There was like a kind of an initial kind of burst of energy from there are a couple films like Now That April's Here, the Bloody Brood. There were Sid's 2 movies, and then Ivy League Killers, a couple others, Drylanders. But there was no infrastructure to show them. But after Sid made A Dangerous Age, other people got this idea that, oh, we could probably do this. Like he got like the art, the kind of the whatchamacallit under people's behinds to get up and do something.
Yeah.
But once they were trying to get the industry going in Canada, there wasn't any infrastructure or interest in place to show them. So Sidney made Cool Sound from Hell, which is about the Beats, the Beat generation in Toronto at that time, and really, really fascinating film and a document of a time and a place. He didn't show it in Canada. He went right to England. It showed in England as part of the second in a double bill with Saturday Night and Sunday Morning. And so this Canadian artifact was never, ever shown in Canada until 2016. That's been caught up in some things since then. Hopefully one day, I know that Canadian International Pictures, they're very interested in clearing up all the issues with it. So hopefully one day we'll get those initial 2 Canadian films, A Dangerous Age and A Cool Sound from Hell, because those are really pioneering works. I mean, these are like, out in like the wild, wild west, and no one's out living on the prairie, and Sidney comes along and sets up his little cabin. I mean,
Right.
there was no industry, so he was the first really to do that.
Well, that's the thing. When you're innovating, there's no momentum, and innovating is difficult for a myriad of reasons. Not only because there's nobody to teach you, but because there's nobody to help you. That's one of the most difficult aspects of it.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully those, and maybe like I'd love to see the Boys pop up, which is, he had 3 boys. He had The Boys, The Leather Boys, and The Boys of Company C. He wanted to do a 4th at one point about truckers called The Boys on the Road. That didn't happen. So there's a film called The Boys from 1962, British film, again with Dudley Sutton, also with Robert Morley and Richard Todd, which blends the kitchen sink British school of drama with a courtroom piece and cuts back and forth in like a Rashomon type movie. Very, very interesting film, which has never seen the light of day in the U.S. I'd love for that to come out during one night. There's a lot of British films in the British era that people don't know about here. So hopefully.
So the next obvious question, and we'll finish up with Sidney with this, is if somebody has never watched any Sidney J. Furie film and they're thinking about this, who do you think is your gateway Furie? If you were not only just a type of film, but if you like this director, you'll probably like Sidney.
Oh, that's an interesting question. I've never been asked that before.
And when I was trying to think of this earlier, and you can steal this if you want, I'm willing to bet that you'll have a better answer, is one of the things that I was thinking is I'd almost throw like a De Palma at it, because he's singular. He's been successful across a myriad of genres. He knows his shots, and he's got some very interesting shot selections like Sidney as well.
Well, I'll tell you, when I interviewed the cinematographer Stephen Burum many years ago, about 10 years ago, I interviewed Stephen. He's shot, for Brian De Palma, of course. He shot The Untouchables. He shot, I think, a few other films by Brian De Palma. He also shot a number of films for Coppola. Burum said on the record that the 3 directors, best directors of my career, are Furie, Coppola, and Brian De Palma. These are the 3 most exciting directors where I felt liberated as a visual artist.
Wow.
And I felt like I was not only trusted, but I felt like I was getting good ideas from my key collaborator. Burum loved working with Sidney. Loved working with Brian De Palma. Loved work, and Burim in that period was really into the split diopter imagery.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of that in the Entity. There's a lot of that in The Outsiders. A lot of that in The Untouchables. So that was, Burim was really into that type of thing at the time. So Sidney said he would never. Burim said he would never just use the split diopter when I wanted to. It was always like, well, how can we really make it look classy and not just have this big blur middle of the screen? Like, how can we either disguise it, or how can we make it look really, and then
make it seem like it was necessary? Right.
And it became this kind of like imperative. And what the crazy thing about The Entity is that they got extra time to shoot that film because of some tax deal. So they had to spend an elongated or extended amount of time to shoot this movie. It was like it's
what a luxury that is.
No, exactly. It's the inverse of what is normally the case.
Right.
So like they would take like a couple extra days on some scenes because they not only because they could, because of these tax reasons they had to. So it's not only that Burim, I think in that case, was getting a robust collaboration. It was also that they had time to execute a number of things that would have taken probably much, and did take much longer, because they had that allotment. So yeah.
Well, I guess De Palma's a decent answer then, huh?
That would be a good answer, yeah. It's not, I mean, Furie isn't a consistent genre guy. He really hops around. When I was writing the book initially, I never got bored, not that you would get bored writing about film, but like I was really deeply immersed, as I am now again with the box set, but I was really deeply immersed when I was writing my book on him. And it wasn't always like this, like, oh, I gotta really, I gotta stick with this guy for a while. And I was like, oh no, I could, if I'm in the mood for a musical, he's made musicals. If I'm in the mood for a Western, he's made a Western. If I'm in the mood for, a spy movie, he's made a spy movie. Right. Whatever genre, I was like, oh, he's done everything. So like, I was like, whatever I was in the mood for on a given night, and knowing that I had to, do a deep dive into, and kind of do a deep exegesis of these movies. It's like, depending on the mood, I was like, yeah, let's do one of the musicals tonight. And that was great, but I was watching another one of these video casts about one of these other physical media casts, and these guys didn't know a whole lot about Furie, and no crime. Not a lot of people do. He's a well-kept secret.
Right.
And they were just like, well, he's maybe not an auteur. I think this guy had an accent. It's like, he's not an auteur, but it's exciting that in this box set you have 5 movies that are completely different from each other. And I think Howard Berger posted, like, this is a really nice video cast, but oh boy, nothing connects them. You guys have no idea. It is obscure, and we're going to prove to you why.
Well, I will happily admit that I am very elementary on Fury. There's enough that I'm more familiar than I thought, because again, it's one of those directors that has hopped around genres so many times that you start to think this isn't the same person. Clearly, these are different facets of my life that I've discovered these films. I would never think to connect those dots, but it's like John Carpenter. I love Carpenter, but they're all basically very similar.
Yeah. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But I mean, if you look at the Leather Boys and the Ipcris File,
right,
then you jump to Ladybugs. How do you get there? Wow, what a career!
And that connective tissue and that evolution is one of the most exciting things about discovering somebody like this, and a box set like this, and finding somebody like you who has done all of the work for us, and we can just dive in and reap the benefits of that.
I as you can tell by we're heading into the 2-hour mark. I'm an obsessive when it comes to Fury. You get me talking about him, I can't shut up. So
That is okay. We all need that right now, and something else we need. Let's get obsessive about you. I mean, you've done a whole bunch of features. How many features have you actually made at this point?
Oh boy, it's hard to count at this particular juncture because there are a number of things in editing. So Overwhelm the Sky, which is my most recent release, was number 7.
Okay.
And then I shot a film a few years ago, which needs an ending, which we're going to address very soon, called Even Just, and that is going to be number 8. Zabriskie Point, it's a Zabriskie Point film, which has been getting very good initial reactions from some pretty good critics. I'm very, very grateful for that. It works because it's a very personal film about my it's partly the history of my cinephilia and a compendium of my obsessions in general. So culture, counterculture, desert, it's about all these things. So that's number 9 if you count that film among the other narratives that I've done. But it is a feature. It's 98 minutes. And then I just shot a new feature. Well, most of it. We shot in September here locally a film called Countercurrents, which is a bit of a companion to the Zabriskie film. And then we shot a prologue in New York last month. So that's in editing at the moment. And that's I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on that because I can, and I'm going to keep you for another fucking half hour. But it's the most musical film I've ever made. There are like 5
interesting
that figure into this film. For any fans of bands like the Phenomenal Handclap Band or the Losing Streaks, they're both not only perform in the movie, but they appear as actors in the film. This is my most musical movie, where the music is very integral to the unspooling of the narrative, I guess. So that would be number 10. But yeah, that's I guess that's number 10.
And you've got multiple things in the works. It seems like there's documentary stuff that you've been working on long form. There's visual essays that are almost feature length on some of these. There's so much going on that you've just contributed to over the amount of time. Is there a common place where people can access some of this if they're interested based on hearing how you speak on them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a lucky guy in that I get to do these essay pieces and whatnot, and that's my day job. So thankful for that, of course. And normally these are for the discs. If anyone has been interested in a specific essay and they want to access just that without buying the disc, I've been known to furnish pathways. So if you really want to see one of them or a couple of them, just contact me.
What about your features? Are those? Are we getting a Kramer box set anytime soon? Or
someday, when I'm 90.
When you're 90.
No. So Overwhelm the Sky is available on Kino Lorber. They were nice enough to pick that film up when it was in a pandemic bind. Which is very complex and hard to explain in a condensed amount of time. So that does have a disc. It is also on a number of platforms. It's 3 hours long, but I'm told that it's my longest movie. I don't normally make movies that long. Normally they're in the hour and a half to hour 45 minute range. But I'm told that the 3 hours of Overwhelm the Sky fly right by. So. Nice. And the critics loved it. The critics really, we got a rave from NPR, from KQED, NPR. We got most of the critics. I want to say like 98 or 99% of critics really loved it. So don't let the runtime intimidate you. Try not to anyway. That, and you binge watch like 8 hours anyway. So whatever, just 3 hours is nothing.
That's true. That is very, very true. The link for that and for anything else that we can share for you, I will happily put in the description below. People need to
There was. I'll just do a brief mention of another feature.
Sure.
Major Kids on Seltzer was on Troma now for a while. I let the license on that run out, but that was available via, as he calls himself, Uncle Lloydie. And I did the Avildsen interview with him for Save the Tiger, and I spent an interesting evening in his home on the Upper East Side about 10 years ago, or 10 to 12 years ago. I've always loved Lloyd, but Rikos, Razor Kids on Seltzer, is now on the torrents. It's not a perfect film. I don't mind you torrenting, that film.
I don't think I've had anybody advocate for torrenting on this channel yet, so good job.
Hey, it gets its seen. I don't expect to, get rich off that film. So, but that has actually Barry Newman in the film. I was able to rustle him up for a little bit part. As a lawyer. So
nice.
Yeah, so
I will be doing my best to track as many of these down as I can. Like I said, I had meant to previously. I will be doing what I can to track them all down, and then tracking you down again to do another one of these, so we can discuss just those films.
Azer Konegdo has Josh Safdie of the Safdie brothers.
Wow, nice.
So I knew Josh and Benny from New York when they weren't rock stars.
Yeah. Yeah, the last decade has been pretty kind to them, I'd say.
Yeah. I still keep in touch a bit with Josh, who seems to always be busy, but we will forgive him because he makes such great movies.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Good Time, and they do great stuff.
Yeah.
Daniel, anything else coming up that you want to highlight other than the Furie box set? Anything you want to tease?
Other than the last 2 hours, I think I'm good.
Oh, that's it. No, nothing else. Sincerely, thank you for doing this. This has been an incredible pleasure. The amount of things that I've admired from afar, this is nice to be able to see kind of transpire, even though it was earlier than I anticipated because I wanted to see those features first. But hopefully it hasn't felt like 2 hours and it's gone by just like over one the sky.
I'm ranting a lot. I hope I'm not I hope I'm not too overbearing and too overbearingly loquacious, but
either way, I'll pan and scan this to death so it'll look a lot better, and I'll edit it down to about 34 minutes.
Okay, great.
Daniel, thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we can do this again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, man.
Thank you for watching The Disconnected. On the way out, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel, that you've liked the video, and that you've copied the link to be able to share it with someone else that may appreciate this.